And then we come to the closing of the show. See, that was technically the official main event, but now we get to the unofficial portion of the show. And at this point, Bryan Danielson excused himself from commentary due to what he said, personal issues that he has with certain members of this match coming up, this unsanctioned match. So he left. Jim Ross took his place. For the 5-on-5 lights out steel cage match with Will Ospreay, Darby Allin, Kenny Omega, Kota Ibushi, and the Ace. The Ace, Hiroshi Tanahashi. His final ever match here in the UK, taking on Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Gabe Kidd, and the Young Bucks. Now, the cage they used, it wasn't very high, but it encompassed most of the ringside area, all but the announce desks. That's where it ended. So the announcers were safe. Poor Jim Ross was not trapped inside this cage with these crazy people. For some reason, they already had tables that were set up outside the ring. Justin Roberts announced that AEW would not be held responsible for what happens here in this next match. I mean, look, it may be unsanctioned, but they gave everybody a proper entrance. Everybody got their usual entrance. Everybody got their theme music. Looked pretty official to me. Ospreay was the last entrant for the babyface team. There was a video package that played for him with highlights of his career there right before he came out. It was narrated by his fiancée, Alex Windsor, the soon-to-be Mrs. Bruv. And it was the superstar entrance that you would have expected him to get here in London, effectively for what is his farewell match before he goes off to have surgery. The Young Bucks came out, and they had their music cut off within 5 seconds of it playing. They cut the music off. They cut the Tron off. It all went black. And then they put the basic, Matt and Nick, like Nickelodeon graphics up. And they started playing Mbop by Hanson. They played fucking Mbop for the Young Bucks. 1997 called. They want their music back. When I heard them coming out to this song, like this was fucking great. I had a nice laugh at this. This was fucking great. Although I will say, Tony, you pay for Mbop, but you can't pay for Oasis for Nigel. Come on, man. What's going on here? What's going on here? So the Bucks were all pissed when they heard the music. The Death Riders and Gabe Kidd, they entered through the crowd. Excalibur confirmed that All In will return to Wembley Stadium next August. The Bucks brought a bag into the ring, which was left by the production member that they had instructed to find the most dangerous weapon that they could find. And they emptied it out thinking it was going to be thumbtacks or maybe broken glass or something. And it ended up being gummy bears. And the Bucks were annoyed. Jon Moxley was not happy about this. Ospreay got busted open at ringside after being launched into the side of the cage. Claudio pressed Darby over his head, military pressed him up, launched him like a lawn dart clear into the side of the cage. He took a hell of a bump there. Darby also got busted open. Not on that spot. He got busted open. There was a ladder, if I remember, that was up against the corner turnbuckles. And I think Darby took a bump on the ladder and he fucked up his ear because his ear was all mangled and bloody and blood was just pouring out of the side of his head. And as blood is pouring out of his head, the Death Riders, they duct tape him to a chair, arms and all. So he can't move. He is completely defenseless here. Jon Moxley then pulls out a fork, and he begins to jab the fork repeatedly into Darby's ear and through his bloody earlobe. He's putting the fork through the earlobe and he's yanking on it and he's stabbing him with it, and the blood it's just, the camera zoomed on it, he's twisting it and he's stabbing him with it. This was completely disgusting. I know that Moxley loves this kind of shit, but the AEW torture porn stuff that we sometimes see them do, I'm not a fan of it. So this might have done something for you. It might have had you feel in a certain way. This didn't do shit for me. I thought this was just completely disgusting and stupid. Then Claudio picked up the chair and he body slammed Darby while he's still duct taped to the chair. He body slammed him in the chair. The Young Bucks pulled the barbed wire table out from under the ring. The Bucks set it up inside. Moxley wanted a Death Rider. Ospreay, though, tackled him through the barbed wire instead. Omega hit a Terminator dive at one point, and as if they intended it that way, and I don't know if they did, the camera cut to Marina Shafir outside the ring at the exact moment that she decided to yell, "Fuck you, Kenny." The announcers didn't acknowledge it. They cut away. It's like great timing on that. Later on, Ospreay and Omega, they hit a Hidden Blade V-Trigger combo on Gabe Kidd. They had him beat. Kidd's teammates, though, broke up the pin. Omega put Moxley down with a One-Winged Angel and had him beaten, but that got broken up as well. Moxley, who was bleeding from the forehead, so as not to feel left out here, because if other people are bleeding, Jon Moxley has to bleed. So he set up a ladder next to the side of the cage. He wanted Wheeler Yuta to climb inside. Moxley climbed over the side of the cage and went to the floor. Darby bit the head of Yuta and punched him until he fell off the cage and onto the Japanese announce desk. They had a Japanese announce desk right next to the English announce desk. Darby exited the cage. He went after Moxley, who was trying to get away. Darby got Moxley underneath one of the tables that was stacked. They had tables that were, I think it was 4 tables, 2 layers side by side, but they had these tables stacked right outside the ring at the foot of the aisleway. And he has Moxley just kind of bent over, leaning on one of the tables underneath the top one. And Darby's climbing the cage. And again, not a very tall cage. This is not the cage, for example, that Will Ospreay wrestled, Kyle Fletcher in a few months ago. This is not the cage they use for blood and guts. So it's high enough where, you've got some decent height, but it's not like super, super tall. But Darby climbs to the top of the cage. Marina Shafir pulls Moxley to safety. So he's safe now. He's away from the tables. Darby's on top of the cage. Gabe Kidd meets him up there, hits him with a low blow. So now Gabe Kidd is on top of the cage and he applies a sleeper hold. And Darby reaches up behind him and he rakes the eyes, gouging the eyes. And then both men fall off the cage and they crash and burn through all of the stacked tables down below. And it was a hell of a bump for Darby to take, but it was really Gabe Kidd who was on the bottom and he took the brunt of it and Darby fell right on top of him. So thankfully he was okay, but that looks scary because again, all of his weight, not that Darby is a giant man, but all of his weight just came crashing down right on top of Gabe Kidd. So yeah, it was a big spot. Not the spot of the night or anything. I could thank Michael Oku for that on the pre-show. But still a hell of a spot. So inside the cage, Ospreay hit a Stormbreaker on Claudio. Omega and Ibushi hit stereo V-triggers on Nick Jackson. Omega hoisted up Matt and Ospreay hit him with a hidden blade from the top rope into a One-Winged Angel from Kenny Omega. Then they let Tanahashi, they gave him the floor. They let Tanahashi ascend to the top rope. He hit a high fly flow, his last ever in the UK. And he got the pin. Over 30 minutes into this madness, the babyfaces win. As the babyfaces are celebrating inside the cage, Excalibur says that Darby was getting medical attention at ringside. Yeah, no shit. Omega helped Darby to his feet, and Darby looked like he was out of it. I don't know if he was concussed or not, but he was certainly acting like it. So maybe he was just doing a really good job of selling how dizzy he was, but he looked like he was in a car wreck. So they all come into the cage, not into the ring, but into the cage. Ospreay's in the ring. He's kneeling down and he's shaking hands and hugging and getting his kudos from each of his teammates here, Omega and Tanahashi. And they give him the ring to himself. So the rest of the babyfaces exit the cage. Ospreay's in the ring all by himself. They, no music. Everyone's giving him a standing ovation. Then they play Ospreay's music. And this is his send-off. He made it through alive and in one piece. And we don't know when the next time is that we're going to see Will Ospreay in the ring. But he got the win. He's in his home country, in front of his home people. And everybody is cheering for him. And they're chanting for him. And they're applauding him. And it's this great moment for him. He exits the ring. He's not out of the cage yet, but he exits the ring. He's on the floor. He's about to leave the cage. When he turns around, though, Claudio, because the heels were still inside, they were on the floor. Claudio blasts him with a European uppercut, and then he locks the cage door. while Moxley puts the boots to Ospreay. And with the door locked, we are supposed to believe here that the babyfaces outside the cage are unable to do anything about this. They're trying to get in through the door. The door is locked. Oh my God, what are we going to do? This man is being brutalized here inside this cage with a bad neck. And there's just nothing we can do. Now, Tanahashi, I can understand because he's got the jelly knees. So Tanahashi shouldn't be climbing anything. He shouldn't be climbing into bed. But you got Kenny Omega, you got Darby Allin, you got Kota Ibushi. Nobody thinks to climb in over the cage. Now you have Wheeler Yuta, who's right by the door inside the cage. And he's got a kendo stick. So he can poke them and prod them and use that as a weapon to try to prevent them. But nobody is even attempting to climb into the cage. And nobody is thinking, maybe I should go around to the other side. Maybe I'll beat them to the punch and I could try to climb in that way. It's like a few weeks ago, we were going into SummerSlam, right? And on the WWE Vault channel, they uploaded the cage match from SummerSlam in '94 between Bret Hart and Owen Hart. And when the match was over, it was pure pandemonium. It was absolute chaos because you had all of the Hart family members at ringside. And Jim Neidhart he got, out of his seat and jumped the barricade, and he clotheslined the Bulldog over the barricade, and his wife went tumbling over with him, and all the brothers. So they get Bret back in the cage, and they're beating on Bret. And so what are the brothers doing? The brothers are trying to climb into the cage, and this was a taller cage. And they're climbing, and Owen he took his shoe off, and he's going over there every now and then to bat them down. But they're trying to climb over into the cage, and eventually they make their way in. I'm like, you know what? This looks like this was mass chaos. And it looked like, okay, this is what you would do in this situation. You're desperate to help out your family member here who's being just destroyed. The door is padlocked shut. Let me try to climb into the cage. It would be the equivalent of the Bulldog and all the brothers just standing there going, gee, I don't know what to do. What should we do here? I mean, Davey, is there a Home Depot maybe nearby? Maybe you can go buy some bolt cutters. I don't know. I guess we can't do anything. It would be ridiculous. So I'm watching this, and it's the dumb babyface syndrome, of course, and nobody is doing anything. So finally, the Ops, they run out. Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, Katsuyori Shibata, they run out. I should mention to you, by the way, that Marina Shafir, who had been outside the cage, on the opposite side to where the baby faces were acting like there was nothing they could do, Marina Shafir climbed over into the cage. Again, nobody thought to even attempt this. It's not like they were even trying and they're like at the top and then they get like knocked down or anything. Like, no, they're just like, shit, what do we do? So the Ops, they run out, and actually before the Ops even comes out, I'm skipping the best part here. Before the Ops even comes out, because Ospreay's being stomped on and DDT after DDT, and Moxley gives him a Death Rider. Again, all this shit right on his injured neck in the middle of the ring here. And they're doing this to try to get heat. It's Ospreay in the UK, just got this big win, and now you're killing this dude. And it was designed to get heat, and it didn't work. This crowd didn't give a shit. Or whatever heat it might have gotten, there was some booze here and there. It was very limited. Like, they did not get the heat that I'm sure they were expecting to get. And part of the issue is, frankly, everybody knew that Ospreay had a bad neck and he was leaving. They knew that Ospreay was leaving. He announced to us already on television that he was leaving, that he was going to have to go under the knife. We knew this coming in. This was not like a big shock angle. Oh my God, what are they doing to Will Ospreay here? And that might have been part of the issue here. But whether it was apathy or boredom or whatever it is, the crowd was not reacting, I think, in the way that you would expect them to react in this situation. And Excalibur is on commentary saying, oh my God, they wrapped the chair around his neck. They just stomped on the chair. This could be the end of his career. But that's what they did to him in Texas. It wasn't the end of his career then. Although I guess they're crediting his injury to the Death Riders and what they did to him, but he was back on TV 2 weeks later. So whatever, they did the same thing to him again here. He laid there dead with the chair around his neck. Then the Ops comes out. And if I have to listen to one more sicko on Twitter after I posted this, because I posted about how dumb the baby faces were made to look here at the end. And if I have to listen to one more sicko tell me Wheeler Yuta was there with a kendo stick, there was nothing they could do. I know this is like your gotcha moment to AEW, but clearly you weren't paying attention. And Wheeler Yuta was there with a kendo stick, and so they couldn't get into the cage. They were trying, but they couldn't get into the... And I'm like, do these people honestly expect me to sit here and you're going to tell me that Powerhouse Hobbs was unable to get into the cage because Wheeler Yuta stopped him from doing so? That Wheeler Yuta stopped him from doing so. Do you know what Powerhouse Hobbs could do to Wheeler Yuta with that kendo? Do you know how far up his ass he could jab that kendo stick if he wanted to? And you're actually going to defend this shit? Because they'll defend it to the death, of course. I mean, I know this already, and this goes for both sides, but it's worse with AEW. Like, the really hardcore defenders where they could do no wrong, and right, everything they do is great, everything's great. Officer Bar Brady, nothing to see here. And I get it, they will defend it until their death. They will defend it until their dying breath. I mean, it's like fucking Citizen Kane, right? The last fucking words out of his mouth, Rosebud, right? And the AEW sickos, it would be Yuta. To their dying breath. I understand that, but like, please, if you are going to continue to make this point and argue this to me, I will personally pick up the phone and I will personally call the psych ward. I will make the call, okay? You just let me know. Let me know where to send them. There is no defense of this. It's stupid. It was very, very dumb. It was not well thought out. Or at least an execution, maybe. It didn't come off the way that it was supposed to. It was dumb. It's okay to admit that it was dumb. It's okay. I promise you, they will not kick you out. They will not kick you out of the family. They will not kick you out of the cult. Okay? You'll be okay. You'll be fine. But now the ops are at ringside. Finally, someone says we should get the cage raised. And they did lift the cage. The Death Riders were able to make their escape. They escaped through the crowd. Trainers and babyfaces, they all made their way into the ring to check on Ospreay, who was laying there dead. And that was the end of this 4.5-hour odyssey here that was Forbidden Door, London. Now, I understand that they killed him off because he was going away anyway, but again, I just thought, the Death Rider stuff, killing him at the end, it really wasn't necessary. I know why they did it. I know what they were going for. They wanted to put heat on the Death Riders. But I feel like if you were to have the heels just win, just have the heels win. And then you could still give Ospreay that moment at the end where he's like half dead, but he gets up and everybody gives him a nice ovation, but he's all like, man, I let you guys down, and it's all beat up and injured. And then he gets that exit, with dignity. That's the last we see of him for a while, but have the heels go over. That would have been effective too. But still give Ospreay that moment at the end. Instead, they repeated the same angle they already did with him in Texas, which ended up not really meaning a whole hell of a lot, but they repeated the same angle, and they, ended up making everybody look like an idiot, but they wanted to go for the heat here at the end. The match here, here's the thing about this match. When they announced this as a lights out, unsanctioned match, just like Anarchy in the Arena, Blood and Guts, and those types of matches, you know what to expect coming in. Like, you can never really be shocked by what they give you here. When they do the gore and the blood and the violence, the ultra violence and the disgusting shit that they do, it's part and parcel of what Tony Khan loves, and just what they do and what Moxley loves, and you know what to expect. So I knew that coming in here, the blood and the gore and the plunder. I wasn't a huge fan of this match. This match it really wasn't for me. I'm sure for some people, they'll think it's the best thing in the world. For me, Hangman MJF had the best match in the entire show. I enjoyed that more. Because to me, we had Anarchy in the Arena a few months ago, a Double or Nothing. This was Anarchy in the Arena, but in a cage. There's a sameness to this. And Anarchy in the Arena, I had a lot of fun with this year, especially the whole let the bodies hit the floor part with Drowning Pool. That was a really fun match. But that's what this was. But it was contained within it for the most part. It was contained within a cage. And we just had that a few months ago. I mean, at least they were smart enough to not do blood and guts. That would have been complete overkill. Like if they had gone from anarchy in the arena to blood and guts like a month and a half later, they may still do it before the year is over, but they didn't do blood and guts. But I just feel like I've seen this before. This time they tossed in a few names, who we normally don't see. Tanahashi and Gabe Kidd, Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi we haven't seen in a month, so they threw them in there. I did think it was a nice gesture, giving Tanahashi the pin at the end, if the babyfaces were going to win. So I like that. I mean, I thought that was nice. But the story here is Darby and Jon Moxley. That's what the match was supposed to be, really. But they probably want to hold off on it until September, All Out. So they gave us this in the meantime. The story coming in here, though, was more about Will Ospreay and his injury. That's really what the story was. Is Ospreay going to be able to make it through the match in one piece? Because he was medically cleared, and he's been doing a lot of interviews this week talking about how my doctors told me that, it shouldn't get any worse, and they're comfortable with me, and I'm comfortable going in there and protecting myself enough. But, he was also talking like, if this is the last time I get to be the real Will Ospreay, then I'm going to go out there and give it my all. And he didn't do anything in the match that was too crazy. They left that to Darby, who is always going to do crazy shit no matter what. Ospreay leaving is going to leave a hole in the roster. There's nothing that could be done. I don't know if he's having a fusion. I don't know if he's having like a cleaning and they're just going to fix up a few things and he'll be back in 5 months. If it's a fusion, he's gone for a year. There's a big difference there. We're talking about, Ospreay out for 4 or 5 months or Ospreay out for 10 to 12. Big difference. And we don't know. He hasn't commented on exactly what the surgery and what the procedure is going to be. It's going to be tough, especially if Swerve has to be out for a while. People are going to have opportunities to step up and take their place because those are 2 big baby faces to lose, even if it's only for a few months. The matches were solid on this show, solid to very good in some cases. I thought the AEW World Title match for the most part was excellent. Again, we get solid to very good matches. I mean, they shit them out every week on AEW television. When the show was over, I was like, you know what? This was a good show. This was not a great show. This was not one of my favorite shows, but it was good. It was good. I didn't feel like I was cheated out of my money. They always give you an overload of matches. They should, I mean, I've said my piece on that, but they want to try to get everybody on the show. That's fine. They stuck most people on the pre-show at the very last minute. 4 matches. Every match was like an all-star 6-person, 8-person tag match. Whatever. There's so many matches. There's so many championships. It could be dizzying sometimes. But I felt like there was enough on this show that I did like, that I got my money's worth. In terms of in-ring, it was a good show. In terms of the stories and the angles, nothing really to get excited about here. Honestly. Happy to see Wardlow back. Happy to see Jamie Hayter back. She'll obviously be working with Tekla. But in terms of the angles and the stories, this was... It was pretty weak. And again, Forbidden Door is a novelty that has worn out its welcome with me. I know some people would disagree. A lot of people agree that it was a cool concept 3 years ago and even 2 years ago. But at this point, the Forbidden Door, it's very played out. We get the Forbidden Door every single week. So it doesn't mean what it used to mean. And this year was the 1 year more than any other that they've been doing this show where it was an AEW show more than anything. It didn't feel like a Forbidden Door show. Most of the matches were AEW talents and they dropped people in here and they're Hiromu here, Tanahashi there. But for the most part, it was just an AEW show, masquerading as a Forbidden Door show. So is Tony Khan going to continue the concept? Yes. They did 19,000 people here at the O2. I don't know what the gate was. It's probably in the top 5 that they've ever done. It was a very successful show. Next year, they should be back to the normal schedule with this show in June and All In August. So they may have greater access to talent from New Japan at that point. Who even knows what the New Japan roster is going to look like at that point? New Japan is going through a period of great upheaval right now. They're trying to make new stars. They've lost a lot of stars. I think that's part of the problem. New Japan as a product is very cold. When they did the Forbidden Door 3 years ago, New Japan was, I don't want to say it was super hot because it really hasn't been super hot since COVID. COVID really did a number on this fucking company. But they were hotter than they were now. They had bigger names than they do now. Every year that goes by that New Japan gets that much weaker, it makes this show feel weaker. That's absolutely part of it. New Japan is ice cold right now. Takeshita just won the G1. Takeshita's an AEW guy. And he wasn't even on the show in a match. I mean, he came out briefly, but he wasn't even in a match on the show.